Exposed, the sinister spaceship drifting in the Oort Cloud, a haunted horror discovery revealed it hung in the night, a flickering, ghostly figure that sent shivers down your spine. Unearthly lights danced about its surface, casting eerie shadows over Brookfield, Ohio, like a predator watching its prey. It pulsed, glimmered, a spectacle that should evoke wonder but instead wrapped the whole neighborhood in fear. From the creaky boards of her old suburban home, Sarah sensed its malevolence, a chill that seeped deeper than the bone, as if every neighbor turned into a suspect, staring at her with eyes filled with secrets. As dusk settled, familiar laughter rang out from 2 houses down, mingled with the strangely urgent whispers of adults gathered together. Sarah tried to focus on the innocence of her 2 children, Emily and Jake, yet a nagging dread clenched her insides. Shadows flickered behind closed curtains, and her heart raced with visions of missing pets and shattered families. Those cheerful summer barbecues now mirrored grotesque rituals, masked in eeriness beyond the stench of charred meat. Deep in the bowels of the hospital, Sarah's mind wandered off during a quick break. The fluorescent lights buzzed as she explored the cosmos on her phone, where a weathered article about an unknown object drifting in the Oort Cloud caught her eye. It shimmered in the digital abyss, calling to her like a tantalizing nightmare. What if? She thought, her breath hitching. As if sensing her thoughts, the light above flickered again, now brighter, sending panic through her veins. She shook her head, dispelling the irrational fears that flooded back. At home, Emily and Jake skittered around playfully, their innocence flowing from their laughter. But then something shifted. They huddled together, whispering about a shiny friend who visited at night. Sarah froze, her heart pounding like a drum. They may just be kids, but that light, it felt wrong. A gut-wrenching terror gripped her as she recalled Mr. Thompson's friendly eyes, lips curving into a little too cheerful smile. His tale of the dark secrets of Brookfield played on a loop in her mind, his laughter twisting into something sinister, woven with warning. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension coiled tighter in her chest when Sarah received the call, her breath hitching as the mother from 3 doors down told her about a dog found lifeless in the shape of her children's shiny friend. Panic washed over her, a cold sweat blooming beneath her skin. It was real, more real than she dared to believe. The specter of financial strain loomed larger, the sense of isolation deepening. Faced with this grim revelation, she was drawn back to those strange gatherings, determination igniting a fire within. Sneaking closer, she held her breath, a rabbit caught deep in the thicket. Whispers spilled from the shadows, clutching her attention. Mr. Thompson suddenly stepped forth, eyes glimmering with secrets, a smirk twisting his lips as he beckoned her closer. "You should have never looked," he whispered, his voice smooth as silk, yet saturated with malice. The truth of her neighborhood, once draped in comfort, spiraled into her, consuming her thoughts. As the light above flickered once more, illuminating the faces of those she once trusted, dread pooled in her stomach. With shadows gathering in every corner, Sarah had to muster her strength to confront whatever lurked in the grip of darkness, knowing the safety of her children slipped through her fingers. What unveiled horrors awaited her beneath the veneer of their quaint suburb? The night deepened, wrapping Brookfield in an unsettling silence, broken only by the rustle of leaves stirred by an unseen wind. Sarah stepped cautiously into the darkness, heart pounding like a wild animal. She needed answers, but dread gnawed at her insides. The gasps and murmurs drifted like ghosts, creeping through the neighborhood. Mr. Thompson's twisted grin haunted her thoughts, echoing in her mind. How could a seemingly friendly neighbor turn into a figure of terror? She peered into the windows of his house, shadows playing against the pale curtains. Were they gathering? Planning? A shiver ran down her spine as she thought of the lifeless dog. Shiny friend, the kids had called it, innocence twisting into something grotesque. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. From the corner of Thompson's yard, a group of neighbors, a huddled mass, stood together, whispers curling around them like smoke. They didn't seem to notice her, their attention fixated on the glimmering object in the sky. It pulsated, giving off a rhythm that resonated with an unsettling harmony. Was it calling them? A faint sound of laughter erupted from the group, sharp, quick. It twisted in the air, a sound Sarah had never heard from her friends before. She felt ice run through her veins. She crept closer, drawn like a moth to the flame. Their faces, illuminated under the strange light, glowed unnaturally, eyes wide with a sort of ecstatic fear. What had they seen? Sarah's feet moved of their own accord. She needed to understand what was happening, what had changed in her once cozy neighborhood. Each step felt weighted, a thin veil between safety and terror. As she approached the group, she made out fragments of their hushed conversation, words tumbling out in a rush. "They've come for us, blessings in disguise, you must accept it." Her heart raced, pulling her deeper into the gathering like a marionette. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. The group turned, eyes locking onto her with an unsettling intensity, their earlier joy now replaced by something darker. "Sarah," Thompson said, stepping forward, "we were waiting for you." His words dripped with a sickly sweet charm that twisted her stomach. "You've seen it, haven't you? The ship in the sky?" Before she could respond, a sudden heartbeat pulsed through the atmosphere, a low hum that reverberated like distant thunder. The ground trembled beneath her, urgency and fear mixing in the air. It felt alive, sentient, almost as if it were aware of her presence. "Listen to the call," Thompson urged, "they will show us the way." Sarah glanced around, scanning faces that had once represented safety now masked in fanatical belief. "You're all mad," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. Yet deep down, fear flickered with intrigue, pulling at her resolve. A figure stepped out from the shadows, small and delicate. It was Emily, clutching Jake's hand. "Mommy, we're ready to go," the little girl said, her eyes sparkling with delight. Her words sent a shockwave of horror through Sarah. "No, you don't understand," Sarah cried, lunging forward, heart tearing in two as she reached for her children. But before she could grasp their hands, a blinding light radiated from above, engulfing everything in its glow. The neighbors gasped, awe etched into their faces as they were drawn into its glare. Panic swirled in Sarah's gut, crippling her. As screams echoed off the walls of the houses, the light surged around her, and she was frozen, caught between shadows and a dazzling nightmare. What did they see? What awaited them in the embrace of that light? The darkness loomed heavy as Sarah shouted for her children, but the sound dissolved into the terror surrounding her. In one horrific moment, she faced an unsettling realization: the sinister ship wasn't just a specter drifting in the Oort Cloud. It had thrust its claws into her life, wrapping around her family with a suffocating grip. And as the laughter faded, swallowed by that blinding brilliance, darkness drew ever closer. What horrors lay hidden under the ship's glowing sheen? The light enveloped Sarah, a blinding veil that smothered her senses. Everything felt strange and weightless, as if she were suspended in time. Voices muffled into a buzzing din, overshadowed by the roar of her racing heart. She reached out, desperate to grab hold of something familiar, anything to anchor herself. "Mommy." Emily's voice pierced through the haze, bright and innocent, yet tainted with urgency. But it echoed from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around her like a lasso, pulling her deeper into the light. As the intensity surged, the world around her rippled, shifting into a surreal landscape. Shadows warped and twisted, merging with the brightness until they became grotesque caricatures. No longer faces of friends, they morphed into hollow beings, their smiles stretched too wide, eyes shimmering with an unsettling glow. "Join us, Sarah," a chorus of disembodied voices sang out. It felt like a chant, rhythmic and alluring. Join us in the light. No! She screamed, panic tightening her throat. It wasn't just the light, it was the promise of something more. An insidious allure, beckoning her to abandon her fears. But at what cost? Where are my children? The radiant glow pulsed, and suddenly, she was thrust out of it, hurled back onto the solid ground, breathless. The neighbors stood before her, thoroughly enshrined in the light, caught in a trance. Their skin glistened, almost unreal, as if they were part of the luminescence itself. Then she spotted Emily and Jake, standing just beyond their drugged parents. "Mommy!" Jake cried, his eyes wide with fear. "Help us!" With sheer will, Sarah lunged forward, her hands outstretched toward her children. But the air felt thick, swirling around her, a tangible barrier blocking her path. It was as if something in the very fabric of reality was fighting to keep them apart. "Come back, kids!" she yelled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Desperation clawed at her like the frigid night air. But they seemed to glide closer toward the figures, faces lit with an eerie excitement. "No, no!" A bone-chilling laugh resonated from Mr. Thompson, weaving through the crowd, slithering under her skin. "They have seen the truth, Sarah. The ship shows us the way, the salvation we never knew existed." Her mind raced, combating disbelief with the need to act. In one swift motion, she grabbed a nearby rock, its surface rough and jagged. With primal instinct, she hurled it toward the crowd, instinct screaming at her to disrupt their seduction. The stone struck Thompson's shoulder, jarring him from the daze. Instantly, his eyes flickered, confusion replacing fervor. His grip on Emily faltered, and she stumbled back toward Sarah. "Mommy!" Emily cried, joy and terror intertwining in her voice. "Help us! Stay close!" Sarah screamed, scooping Emily into her arms. But as she turned to get Jake, she was met with the sight of their neighbors, faces twisted into grim masks of anger and fear, snapping back to life in an instant. "Don't leave!" one of them shouted, reaching for her, fingers outstretched like gnarled branches. "No!" Sarah shouted, backing away, clutching her children tight as she felt the pressure of the group closing in. The pulsing light flickered in and out, enveloping them once again, and a dark, foreboding laughter rose like a tide. Her heart raced as the light pushed further, invading every crevice of the night, amplifying the fear that shrouded everything. Sarah Thompson's voice hung in the air, a ghostly whisper. "You can't escape what's meant to be." She stumbled backward, nearly losing her grip on Emily as the blinding radiance ignited around her once more. There was a final, shattering roar, and she and her children were swallowed by the light, but the darkness loomed, pounding at the periphery, and she clung fiercely to her children. What would be waiting for them on the other side of this agonizing entrance? Would they face the truth or succumb to the madness of the ship? Even as the spectral glow surrounded them, Sarah felt panic rise anew, twisting her stomach into knots. The horrifying truth began to dawn. What if the real terror was yet to come? Light burst blindingly, then retreated, leaving Sarah disoriented and gasping. The world rushed back, dark and suffocating. The soft, silken glow that had engulfed them melted away, but the unsettling aura remained. They were in a wide-open space, the vastness pressing down on them, an oppressive weight that swallowed her breath. "Mommy?" Emily's whisper trembled against the silence. "Jake!" Sarah felt the panic claw higher. She scanned their surroundings. Cold shadows danced just beyond sight, hints of movement wrapped in smoke like tendrils. Suddenly, her fingers grasped warmth, Jake's small hand. She held it tightly, feeling the pulse of life, the beating heart beneath soft skin. "Okay, we're together. We'll get through this." But her voice cracked, uncertainty gnawing at her resolve. The landscape stretched before them was a juxtaposition of reality and nightmare. The ground shimmered, smooth and oddly reflective, like black glass glistening under a distant, eerie light. There were no trees, no homes, just the shimmering surface and the whisper of the wind, which carried faint echoes, cries, laughter. Memories twisted in her mind. "Look, Mommy!" Emily exclaimed, pointing. "Over there." Sarah turned. A massive, metallic structure loomed in the distance, outlined against the horizon. Its form was both majestic and terrifying, reminiscent of a giant spaceship, but marred by rust and the passage of something long, dark, and ancient. It was alien yet achingly familiar, like a forgotten relic of a lost dream. "No, we can't go there." Sarah's voice shook, instinct screaming at her to run. But even as she fought the urge to flee, something drew her closer, an irrational curiosity tethered to fear. The shadows began to shift around them, moving in a slow, deliberate manner, as if they possessed life. Wisps coiled and unfurled, and then faces. Faces emerged, twisted and contorted. Friends, neighbors, even the mailman, hollow echoes of people she once knew, their mouths moving in silent pleas, trapped in the twilight of the ship. "Join us," their voices sang, harmonizing with an unholy cadence. "Join us in the light." "No. Get away!" Sarah shouted, clutching her children tighter, their small bodies shaking against her. "We have to go!" Jake cried, fear piercing through his words, but it was too late. The shadows encroached, their laughter tearing at the fabric of sanity. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson appeared at the forefront, skin gleaming grotesquely, eyes wide and manic, holding a strange device that resembled a lantern but pulsated a foreboding light. "You can't resist, Sarah. We are the chosen, the ones who will ascend." As he approached, the air grew heavy, thick with despair and something primal that felt like dread. From the corner of her eye, Sarah caught a glimpse of other figures emerging behind him, each carrying their own malfunctioning lantern, eyes alight with obsession. "Mommy, please," Emily moaned softly, her voice breaking Sarah's focus. She blinked, realizing how close Thompson was, the madness draping over him like a shroud. The lantern flickered, and shadows reached for them, hungry and insatiable. In the depths of her fear, Sarah felt it, the inescapable pull toward that light, the bright promise of escape, tranquility, surrender. And it terrified her. She had to fight. "Run!" she screamed, shoving Jake and Emily behind her as she charged forward, desperate to break free of the encroaching madness. Her heart thundered, urgency fueling her steps, but the ground beneath felt like it shifted, rebellion waiting. Just as they dashed toward the ship, a thunderous crack echoed across the empty horizon. She turned to see the sky tearing apart, a rift forming, glowing with similar insidious light from before, sucking everything in. The ship loomed, promising despair and salvation in the same breath. "Sarah!" The voices beckoned, melding into one seductive song. "Don't resist," but her gaze fixed on Emily and Jake, clinging to hope as they sprinted toward an unseen future, away from the shadows. They had to escape. They couldn't allow the darkness to consume them. Will they find salvation, or will they succumb to the void drawing them closer? The crack widened, and shadows crawled, slithering forward with a determination that chilled her bones. There was no escape, only choices to make, pathways to take, darkness closing in. "Run! Don't look back!" she yelled, knowing the light could trap them again. Could they slip through before being swallowed whole? Sarah pushed forward, fear and adrenaline driving her legs. The weight of the shadows shimmered behind her, a tangible thing that pressed against her back, clawing at her spirit. They didn't just pursue, they were alive, driven by an insatiable hunger for darkness. "Keep running," she urged, glancing back to see the ship looming closer, an amalgam of rust and nightmares. The metallic surface flickered under the light of the rift, appearing to pulse with life, a heartbeat, a breath that echoed in her bones. "Mommy, I'm scared." Emily's small voice broke through the chaos, trembling and small. "I know, sweetheart. Just hold on," Sarah shouted back, heart racing. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground had thickened like molasses, battling her desperate flight. She could feel the pull of the shadows, coiling around her feet, threatening to snare her in its grip. Above, the rift expanded, swallowing the once familiar sky, stretching further and wider as if it were reaching for them. The sound was deafening, a roar that was both liberating and claustrophobic, drowning out the whispers of the faces behind them. She thought she saw her mother among them, her lips moving silently, begging for release. It sent shivers down her spine. "Emily, look at me. Just focus on me," Sarah called, forcing her voice to stay steady. Jake's grip tightened on her hand. They were together, she had to remind herself of that. The metallic behemoth loomed as they approached. Its entrance gaped like a mouth hungry to consume them. A part of her wanted to run inside to find something, anything that could help them escape this nightmare. But the shadows, now almost tangible, clawed at the edges of her mind, tempting her with promises of secrets and forbidden knowledge. She fought against that evil allure. "Mommy! Look out!" Jake screamed. Sarah spun around just in time to see one of the twisted shadows launch forward, a dark mass of despair and malice. It shot past her and swiped at Jake, missing him by inches as Sarah yanked him closer, heart pounding. Terror coursed through her like ice. They were being hunted. "Faster!" she urged, sprinting toward the ship's entrance, the figures behind them slipping closer, their laughter merging with the sound of the rift's roar. Just as they reached the entrance, Sarah stopped short. The inside was illuminated dimly, an eerie glow emanating from the heart of the craft, an invitation or a trap. She hesitated, the question hovering in her mind, was this their salvation or an end? "Mommy, please!" Emily whimpered, eyes wide and glistening with fear. The shadows grew behind them, now curling up toward the ship like vines seeking to envelop them. "Go!" Sarah yelled, pushing them inside, fearing the velvet darkness sliding ever closer. Inside, the air felt thick and suffocating, like inhaling fog. The walls glimmered, reflecting their terrified faces, playing out the horror like a broken mirror. The path twisted around sharp corners, and each step echoed too loudly, the sound bouncing off the walls, amplifying their fear. A low hum began to resonate, vibrating through the air. The glow grew brighter, revealing strange symbols that writhed on the walls, twisting in patterns as if alive. Shadows licked at the edges, pressing from outside, desperate, relentless. "Mommy!" Jake pulled at her sleeve. "We have to go back. It's too late. We can't," she cried, pulling her children onward, deeper into the craft. The glow pulsated rhythmically, the air changing around them, thickening with unseen dread. Suddenly, a loud crash disturbed the air behind them, everything vibrating as the shadows burst through the entrance, pooling inside like a tide of darkness ready to devour everything in its wake. Panic surged through Sarah as she realized the exit was now blocked. There was no going back. They were trapped. "What do we do?" Emily whimpered, eyes darting. In that moment, Sarah froze as she noticed a flickering light glowing from a door further down the corridor. It emanated a warmth she longed for, a stark contrast to the cold terror chasing them. As the shadows writhed with hunger, a relentless urge pushed Sarah forward, deeper into the unknown. "Stay close. We need to find out what's inside." With trembling steps, she moved toward the light, feeling the shadows tighten around her, the fear sharpening into raw urgency. What awaited them across that threshold? Would they find hope or deepen their doom? The pulsating glow flickered, beckoning like a siren, promising revelation or complete obliteration. The flickering light danced ahead, taunting Sarah as she dragged her children deeper into the ship. Each step felt like wading through water, the air thick with tension and dread. Emily's small hand trembled in Sarah's grip, a reminder of everything she had to protect. "Mommy, it's too dark here." Jake's voice wavered with despair. "Just a little further." "I see something," Sarah urged, her own heart racing. The glow seemed to pulse in time with her thoughts, brightening and dimming like a heartbeat. She could feel the shadows creep closer, slithering with a sentience that chilled her spine. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a vast chamber, walls lined with symbols that writhed and twisted in the strange light. It was both beautiful and grotesque, a surreal painting come to life. The glow intensified, illuminating a colossal device at the center of the room, something ancient, otherworldly. It throbbed with energy, casting long, eerie shadows that slanted across the floor like dark fingers reaching for her. "Look at that!" Jake gasped, his eyes wide, a mix of horror and fascination. Sarah felt a pull, a deep urge to approach the contraption, even as every instinct screamed at her to flee. "Stay back!" she warned sharply, moving protectively in front of her children. But the device beckoned her, an invitation wrapped in fear. It glimmered with promises wrapped in shadows. What knowledge could be contained within its metallic embrace? What had it seen? The room vibrated, a low hum resonating in Sarah's chest. The symbols on the walls began to change, shifting violently as if responding to an ancient language desperately attempting to be understood. A whisper echoed in her mind, a gentle caress of words not heard but felt. "Mommy, it's making my head hurt," Emily cried, pressing her palms against her ears, anguish etched on her small face. "Jake, hold on tight," Sarah shouted, backing away from the device. She had to resist, to not let her curiosity snare her. Yet, the shadows were relentless, crawling along the walls, invading the room as if searching for something. They writhed in angry shapes, consuming the space, threatening to engulf everything. The whispers grew louder, an avalanche of voices blending into a maddening symphony filled with despair and rage. "Join us, escape the pain," they beckoned, dark promises echoing in her mind. "What are they saying?" Jake stammered, fear plastering his features as he strained to understand the terrible murmurs. "They want us to give in." Sarah felt the shadows brushing against her, seeking to seep into her thoughts. The weight tugging at her conscience twisted painfully, blurring the lines between sanity and despair. "Mommy!" Emily screamed, suddenly shaking. In that moment, the glow exploded, casting a blinding light that illuminated the entire chamber. Sarah shielded her eyes, gripping her children tightly. In that searing brightness, she glimpsed the faces woven into the darkness, lost souls crying for release, their mouths moving in a silent torture. Then, just as abruptly, everything fell silent. Shadows faded back into the corners, leaving only the trembling glow behind. A stillness descended, heavy as a mountain, wrapping around them like a noose. "Mommy, I can't see them anymore," Jake whispered, but the tension in his voice suggested he felt their presence lingering. One door slammed shut behind them, sealing their escape. "We're trapped." Sarah panicked, heart hammering wildly in her chest. If she didn't act fast, the device hummed excitedly now, as if tasting their fear. Cautiously, Sarah stepped toward it. She needed to know what it was capable of. This could be their only way out or their end. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted, a low rumble vibrating through the chamber. The device lit up fully for a brief moment, revealing a terrifying truth. Its surface was etched with the same anguished faces blanketing the walls, their eyes hollow, pleading. And then it spoke, a deep, resonant voice echoing through the room. "Choose." Fear sliced through Sarah, sharper than any blade. But what did it want? Her to choose? What would she have to sacrifice? As she stood frozen in shock, uncertainty gripped her heart. The shadows stirred once more, whispering frantically, seeking her answer. What did the shadows want from her? And could she resist their chilling call? There was no turning back now. The device hummed louder, as if feeding off her terror, its voice echoing through the chamber. "Choose." It intoned again, deeper this time, shaking the very ground beneath Sarah's feet. The shadows danced closer, stirring restlessly, eager for her decision. "Mommy. What does it want?" Jake's voice trembled, and Sarah could see fear gripping him tighter than her hand. The glow pulsed ominously from the device, illuminating the countless faces etched into its surface, their features twisted in anguish. They looked familiar, as if she had seen them before, but the thought slipped away like smoke before she could grasp it. What horrors had they suffered? What choices had they made? An icy breath brushed across her cheek, and she dared not turn to see what it was. You must choose, the voice insisted, this time imbued with an urgency that sent a shiver down her spine. What could she give? Would it be her own freedom? Or perhaps something far more valuable? The shadows whispered louder, promising comfort and power if she just surrendered. They painted vivid pictures in her mind of warmth, safety, everything she longed for. "Mommy!" Emily cried, clutching her head tighter. The little girl's eyes glimmered with tears. "It hurts. Make it stop." Sarah's heart splintered. She couldn't let her children suffer. Gritting her teeth, she took a step closer to the humming device, fighting the wave of despair that threatened to pull her in. "What do I need to choose?" "Sacrifice," the voice cooed, smooth as silk, wrapping around her mind. "A simple trade, a piece of your spirit for a chance to escape." Panic surged through her. Sacrifice? What would that even mean? The thought of giving a part of herself to some malevolent force made her stomach churn. But as she looked at Jake and Emily, their pale faces illuminated by the eerie glow, she felt a growing desperation. "Mommy, don't." Jake pleaded, his voice breaking, sensing the darkness that clouded her thoughts. The shadows swirled faster now, a vortex of malevolence closing in. They thrummed with anticipation, ready to pounce, eager to consume whatever she deemed most precious. And then she saw it, a flicker of light emerging from within the device, forming into a scene of her family together, happy in a sunlit park. Laughter echoed in her mind, illuminating the darkness for just a moment. Would she trade a memory to escape this nightmare? No. Sarah yelled defiantly, shaking her head. "You won't take anything from me." She pressed her children against her, their warmth anchoring her against the cold terror closing in, but the shadows recoiled in rage, their whispers turning to shrieks that gutted through the chamber. "Choose." They screeched in unison, the sound overwhelming Sarah, one word echoing endlessly, throbbing inside her skull. A tremor shook the ground beneath her again, splitting the floor, and Sarah staggered, barely keeping her footing. Was the chamber collapsing? No. She wouldn't let it end here. With a roar that pulsed through the room, the device surged forward, pulsing like a heart, insistent, demanding. She was running out of time. The shadows clawed at her mind, threatening to unravel her resolve. "Mommy, please." Jake begged, eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, she recalled a memory, a story her grandmother once told her about courage and love, the strength of a mother's heart. And in that moment, clarity flickered through the chaos. "I choose my love for them," she shouted, fierce and defiant. "I won't let you take me." A deafening silence fell, and as the words left her lips, the chamber shuddered violently. The lights flickered erratically, turning the faces on the walls into a twisted frenzy. With a sudden burst, the device exploded in brilliance, sending shockwaves through the room. Sarah instinctively shielded her children, but the light burned bright like a beacon in the darkness. The shadows recoiled in terror, their whispers dissolving into frantic howls, and then it all fell quiet again, the light receding into a ghostly glow, leaving her breathless. Jake and Emily clung to her, fear mirrored on their faces. Was that enough? Sarah gasped, heart racing. The shadows were retreating, but their presence hadn't fully vanished. Just as she caught her breath, an anguished wail shattered the silence, echoing from the corners of the room. It was filled with despair, a warning. You cannot fight what was never yours. The chamber shook once more, and the device flickered ominously. In that moment, Sarah realized that the battle might only just be beginning. What had she unleashed, and what consequences would they face next? The ground trembled beneath them, a low rumble that spiraled into a deafening cacophony. The shadows, once retreating, began to slither back, coalescing into forms that coiled ominously around Sarah and her children. Jake's grip tightened on her hand, his little fingers shaking like leaves caught in a storm. "Mommy, it's not over," he whimpered, eyes darting frantically as shadows danced just beyond the periphery of her vision. "No, it can't be," Sarah shouted against the chaos, mustering every ounce of defiance that remained. Clenching her jaw, she forced herself to take a step forward, toward the heart of the device, which now flickered like a dying star. "I didn't choose to give anything," she cried, desperation spilling into her voice. A visceral fear churned in her stomach. She was reeling from the weight of this dark world and the dread of what was yet to come. With a deafening crash, the walls trembled as silhouettes surged hungrily towards them. Sarah's heart raced, each pulse was sharp with panic, cold sweat trickling down her spine. "Get behind me," she shouted, her words drenched in urgency. She felt the shadows breathe down her neck, their frosty touch creeping through the air, tightening her chest. From the depths of that swirling darkness, a voice, deeper and more sinister than before, hissed, "You cannot defy your fate." "Fate?" She spat, her voice resolute despite the terror quaking within her. "I want to let you take my children." The device responded violently, pulsing erratically, sending shocks of energy coursing through the chamber. The lights blinked strobe-like, illuminating the tormented faces trapped within the device. Their silent screams echoed in her brain, mingling with her rising dread, and then, she saw at a doorway, flickering in and out of existence, at the far end of the chamber. Was it an escape or a trap? "Over there," she urged, pointing toward the brief shimmer of hope. "We have to run." Jake and Emily didn't hesitate. They scrambled forward, propelled by instinct and pure fear. Sarah's legs felt like lead, the weight of the shadows pressing down on her. But she ran, heart racing, legs burning, every breath a battle against the choking darkness. As they dashed toward the flickering exit, the shadows erupted around them in a frenzy, blocking their path. Shrill laughter echoed through the chamber, chilling her blood. Jake stumbled, falling to his knees. "Jake!" Sarah screamed, turning back, the sight of her son crumpled on the cold floor cutting through her like a blade. "Help him!" Emily wailed, her voice high-pitched and laced with terror. Without thinking, Sarah rushed back, flinging herself down to grab Jake. As she pulled him up, icy tendrils wrapped around her legs. She gasped, struggling against the force that threatened to drag her down into the abyss. In that moment of sheer desperation, she felt a surge of energy inside her, a raw, protective instinct that she had never tapped into before. "Let go of us!" she roared, feeling light erupting from her core, the love for her children igniting a fire against the engulfing cold. With a fierce swing of her arms, she broke the shadows' grasp. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in anguish as the warmth from her spirit pierced through their darkness. "Run!" she yelled to Jake and Emily, her voice firm as steel. They surged forward, and she followed. But just as they reached the glow of the doorway, the very essence of the device broke open, a blinding flash of light erupting outward. "Not so fast!" A voice boomed, thick and heavy, reverberating through the room like thunder. Time froze as the shadows coalesced into a figure, terrifyingly familiar yet unrecognizable, shrouded in disdain. The moment felt suspended in despair. "Choose, Sarah," it growled, its eyes shining with malice. Caught between the explosion of light and the insidious voice of darkness, she faced the ultimate dilemma. And that question hung in the air like a guillotine. What would she sacrifice to protect them this time? As the shadows surged again, she braced herself, knowing that the true price of survival still awaited her. What choice would the next moment bring? The nightmare was far from over. The air thickened with dread as Sarah's mind spun in a whirlwind of possibilities. The figure loomed larger, its presence devouring the flickering light. Was it a harbinger of salvation or doom? She felt the foundations of her courage tremble beneath a weight she had never known. Choose, Sarah. The voice coiled around her thoughts. Panic clawed at her throat as she glanced back at her children. Jake's face, drawn with fear, held a glimmer of hope that they would escape. Emily, her small form shaking with a mix of terror and determination, clung tightly to her brother. "Run!" she urged once more, but her command felt hollow against the booming voice. "Choose wisely," the shadowy entity taunted, creeping closer as if savoring their fear. Its eyes danced, pools of obsidian intelligence and malice, feeding on her every doubt. Sarah inhaled sharply. The faint hum of the device seemed to resonate with her heartbeat, like a countdown to the inevitable. She fought back tears, the chilling realization dawning in her mind. Whatever the choice was, it would demand a cost far deeper than mere physical sacrifice. "Your love, or your life," it whispered, a cruel temptation lacing its words. The shadows began to twist, morphing into monstrous versions of her fears. The depths of her mind echoed with images of loss, and the faces of those she cared for grew dark and distorted before her. Before she could resolve her thoughts, the floor shook violently. The children screamed as a fractured segment of the chamber splintered away, revealing a chasm teeming with a swirling dark mist. It swallowed the remnants of the light, leaving them marooned in an encroaching midnight. "Mommy!" Jake cried, his voice a piercing shriek against the chaos. She reached for him, but the very ground underneath her was falling apart, fracturing into the unknown. Her heart pounded in her chest, matching the rhythm of the fragmented structure. She couldn't lose them. Not now. Not when they were so close. "We need to go. Now." Suddenly, the entity lunged forward, tendrils of shadow stretching out as it reached for them, clawing at the air like ravenous beasts. The familiar contours of the room seemed to shift around them, swirling and altering as if the very reality was being rewritten. "I refuse!" Sarah shouted, her voice breathing fire into the tempest. The shadows recoiled. The warmth from her defiance spread outward, each pulse of brightness pushing against the encroaching darkness. "Mommy, please!" Jake clung tighter, eyes wide with tears. "Don't leave us!" A flicker of resolve surged within her. "I won't leave you." With a primal scream, she tore through the darkness around them, reaching for the grasping shadows. In her heart, she felt the undeniable truth: love could be both a weapon and a shield. The walls shuddered, a bone-rattling quake echoing through the chamber. With every ounce of her strength, she surged toward the doorway, pulling her children behind her as she began to break free. But the entity lashed out, constricting around her waist like a serpent. "Your choice, there is no escape," it hissed, pulling her back as Jake fell to the ground, dragged by the malevolent force. "No!" Sarah cried, her heart shattering at the sight of her son being pulled away. In that moment of terror, she saw a flash before her, a vision of the possible futures that hung like a pendulum. One was dark, filled with shadows. The other glowed with the warmth of hope. "Let him go. I choose." The shadows tightened around her, but her voice erupted like thunder, breaking through the dark void. "Mommy!" Jake screamed again, and Sarah felt her world tilting into chaos. Would she truly pay the price of her decision? With ferocious determination, she acted as time blurred around her, energy pulsing in erratic waves. The next moment was a tapestry of heat and fear, a fantastical moment that would change everything once and for all. And as she braced for the unknown, the world dimmed, and darkness slipped toward an impending nightmare. What unforeseen consequence awaited them on the other side? The darkness crackled, the energy around Sarah expanding with a force that pushed her back, and yet, she couldn't allow it to win. She wouldn't lose her children, not now, not after everything they had been through. With all her might, she screamed, "I choose love." In that instant, the shadows splintered, a vicious wave of chaos breaking against an invisible wall of her determination. The dark entity howled, its voice infused with fury and disbelief. The air around Sarah shimmered, thick with tension before bursting into blinding light. Moments felt like hours. In that dizzying brightness, images whirled around her, memories woven into the very fabric of her being, laughter in the park, late-night cuddles reading stories, small hands gripping hers as they navigated the world. Each memory pulsed with warmth, fueling her resolve. "Mommy." Emily's voice broke through, bringing clarity to the haze. Sarah opened her eyes to find herself, once again, in the vast chamber of the ship. Jake and Emily stood firmly by her side, eyes wide in horror but filled with the purity of love. The shadows twisted, still lurking, but something had shifted. The oppressive darkness now met with the warmth of defiance. "Let go of my children." With every ounce of love coursing through her veins, Sarah took a step forward, her heart swelling with strength. The shadows convulsed, recoiling as if they felt the power of her declaration. Her love wasn't just a weapon, it was a shield, something that made them vulnerable. Rumbling arose from the core of the device. The flickering light coalesced into a singular beam. Something monumental was happening, a merging of hate and affection unleashing chaos. She stood firm, her fierce gaze locked on the entity now, refusing to yield. Love radiated from her, growing brighter as if imbued with a cosmic energy that repelled darkness. "You are nothing," she yelled, words echoing in the chamber as the shadows surged forward to engulf her, but they melted away in the haze of incandescent light. "You can't take what is mine." As the shadows clashed against her resolve, they began to break apart like ashes in the wind, swirling into nothingness. A thunderous roar tore through the chamber, the air vibrating with energy. Sarah felt the ground beneath her solidifying, the wicked grip of despair loosening its hold. She turned to her children, pulling them close to her heart. "Hold on to me." The warmth of their little bodies anchored her, reaffirming her determination. Together, they took the last few steps towards the luminous doorway that shimmered with hope. They could see a glimmer of the outside world waiting just beyond it. Jake clutched his sister's hand tightly. "We're going home, right, Mommy?" "Yes." Sarah breathed the answer, and though uncertainty still lingered, she felt the truth resonate deep within her. Love was their anchor. With one last surge of strength, they dashed forward, colliding with the blinding light, completely engulfed. Time stretched into eternity as they felt themselves lifted, the darkness fading into mere memory behind them. Light crackled against their skin, vibrant as a summer day. Then, within the blink of an eye, they tumbled out onto familiar grass, soft, sweet grass blanket beneath them. The sun painted the sky a brilliant shade of blue, and the world felt alive with possibilities. They were home. "Mommy!" Emily squealed, joy bubbling up as she jumped to her feet and twirled. Jake laughed, his little face lighting up with the thrill of freedom. In that moment, they were simply a family again, free from shadows and grasping tendrils of darkness. Sarah fell to her knees beside them, the soft grass grounding her in reality. Tears of relief flowed, blending with the laughter of her children. She embraced them tightly. "We did it, we came home." But as the joy wrapped around them like a warm blanket, somewhere, deep within the shadowed void they had shaken off, the echo of the entity's voice vibrated on the edge of her consciousness. "You cannot escape what was never yours yet." Sarah shook it off, breathing in the fresh air, the laughter of her children drowning out the futility of the call. What mattered was right here, right now. They were together, alive, with the promise of tomorrow waiting. And in that moment, she understood love was a choice, and with that choice, she had rewritten their fate. As the sun began to set, painting the world in golden hues, Sarah watched her children play, their laughter floating through the evening air. The shadows were gone, the weight of that dark chapter lifting, leaving only the promise of a bright new dawn. Her heart swelled with hope. This was their moment, a moment inches from the brink of despair, reborn from the ashes of darkness, together. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this incredible conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to see it. And hey, if you enjoyed the ride, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about the ending. You need to subscribe now.